We are in the thick of fantasy football draft season. That means it is time for one big question for every team in the AFC South. We begin with the reigning AFC South champion, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Will Travis Etienne start catching more passes this season? He was a weapon out of the backfield at Clemson. Didn't really see that translate to the NFL in what was essentially his rookie year last season. Only had 2 games with more than 4 targets, never had more than 3 catches in any game, and he was mostly healthy through the duration of the regular season. The Jags added more firepower at wide receiver this offseason in Calvin Ridley. They added another back in the draft in Tank Bigsby. But for Travis Etienne to make the leap that he needs to become an elite fantasy running back, he needs to see more volume in the passing game from Trevor Lawrence. The Houston Texans. Can CJ Stroud hit the ground running as a starting quarterback from week 1? You know, even with these elite top 5 quarterback prospects, history says it's very, very hit or miss. There's a lot to like about CJ Stroud, extremely productive as a college player at Ohio State. And while Houston still has a long ways to go, roster-wise, they're nowhere close to competing. He's not stepping into a complete disaster situation. They have their coach of the future. They have some pieces on defense. They have reasonable pieces on this offense as well. So I think CJ Stroud can step in and be productive right away. Much like last season, Houston will likely be trailing in a lot of games. That led to this offense being right in the middle of the pack in terms of passing attempts, in terms of yards, in terms of touchdowns. And that was with Davis Mills taking a lot of the snaps. So if CJ Stroud can give this team even average to slightly below average quarterback play, I think he could have some low-end fantasy value. The Indianapolis Colts. How many games does Jonathan Taylor play this season? I think we could certainly talk about Anthony Richardson here, whether or not he's the starter come week 1 or when that decision is ultimately made. But right now, it's all eyes on Jonathan Taylor when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts. Is the back injury real? Is it not real? We have no idea. What we do know is he wants out, and he doesn't feel respected by this organization. And we don't have a ton of time at this point for a very complicated situation to get resolved. We're already seeing Jonathan Taylor's ADP plummet over the last few days. He's going in the 3rd round in some big money drafts. You know, whether or not this gets resolved before week 1 might be the single biggest question, not only for the Colts, not only in the AFC South, but in all of fantasy football right now. That brings us to the Tennessee Titans. Does Ryan Tannehill make it through the regular season as the Titans starting quarterback? Now, my gut says the Titans are looking around at the rest of this division and saying, okay, let's go for it. At least one more year here. And the DeAndre Hopkins signing, I think, would back that up. But unlike last season, and I'd say this with all due respect to our guy Malik Willis, they now have a QB of the future waiting in the wings in Tennessee in Will Levis. And, you know, you look at the schedule, obviously they're playing the AFC South over the course of the season. That's going to benefit this team. But 4 of their first 6 games come against the Chargers, the Browns, the Bengals, and the Ravens. They're going to be dogs in all 4 of those games. If Tennessee gets off to a slow start, how quickly do those calls for Will Levis start to come? And if they do, I don't think that's great news for DeAndre Hopkins or Treylon Burks.